Hi guys, Michele McGowan from Podiatry Unfiltered, and today I want to talk about the dark side of implementation. While knowing what to do is easy, actually changing your practice is hard. I don't think we talk about enough. It's the dark side of implementation because I talk a lot about changing your practice. I've talked about adding technology, about Shockwave, class 4 laser, regenerative medicine, custom orthotics, cash pay services. I've talked about looking at the schedule differently and looking at what your time is actually worth. And most recently, we added a MediPedi spot inside our podiatry office. But here's the thing, having ideas easy. Going to a conference and getting excited is easy. Sitting in the audience and listening to somebody talk about what they've built and thinking, I could do that. That's easy. Even buying the machine is the easy part. Implementation is where it gets hard because Monday morning comes. Now the machine's sitting in your office. Now the patient's sitting in front of you. And now you actually have to say, this is what I recommend. Insurance doesn't cover it. And this is what it costs. And suddenly those voices start creeping in your head. What if the patient thinks I'm just trying to make money? What are other podiatrists going to think who aren't doing this? Do I sound too salesy? What if nobody buys it? Because that's kind of scary. You spend $100,000 on a machine and nobody's using it. What if I just made a huge mistake by purchasing this piece of machinery? That is the dark side of implementation. And if you can't get through that part, it doesn't matter how good the technology is. I think sometimes what holds people back with implementation, even when they get the machine or the product, I think what holds other people back, I can speak for podiatry. I definitely can speak for podiatry. I think you're afraid of what other podiatrists will think. Especially, again, if they're not doing this technology, what are they going to say about you? Shouldn't care. I think this is a problem throughout all medical specialties. I think it's bigger in medicine than most of us admit. I think doctors deeply care about how other doctors perceive them. It's important to be perceived well, for sure. We spent years of learning how we're supposed to practice. You finish residency, you join a practice, or you open one. Patients, you bill insurance. You do surgery, you follow the path. And then one day you decide, maybe I want to practice a little differently. And that's okay. And suddenly you're worried somebody's going to criticize you. Oh, you're doing cash pay now? You do Shockwave? You're doing laser? You're doing PRP? Guys, none of this is new. Shockwave isn't new. PRP is not new. Laser therapy is not new. I went to buy a laser 12 years ago and I was too afraid to do it. There's peer-reviewed literature behind all of these modalities. Does that mean every modality works for every diagnosis or for every patient? No, of course not. That's medicine. Do your homework. Read the literature. Understand the indications. Just don't get a laser and just start lasering everything. Understand the limitations. Don't promise miracles. I can say in my practice, what I tell patients when I'm doing a laser or soft wave is I know that because I definitely do a good clinical workup. I don't just laser everything. I don't just soft wave everything. But I explain to people that I may be able to get them 80% better, 60% better. Sometimes I say, I may be able to get you 60 to 80% better. Surgery is not going to do any better. So for a lot of people to be able to have no downtime, be able to keep working out, be able to keep doing things and get better, there's a big plus for your patients for that. But you don't want to promise miracles. You don't tell somebody something's going to work 100% of the time when it isn't. But once you've done your homework, stop acting like you need permission from the podiatry police to treat your patients. There ain't no podiatry police. You're allowed to practice differently. You're allowed to have your practice go in a direction the way you want it to go. And I think some doctors need to hear that. You shouldn't be afraid. I think then there is the money fear, which I talked about in the last podcast. This is probably one of the biggest barriers to implementation. We're all unbelievably comfortable telling patients they need surgery. Think about that. We can sit across from somebody and say, I'm going to make an incision on your foot, cut the bone, move it over, put some screws in it. You're going to be in a boot and you're going to have several weeks of recovery. And we're fine. There's no problem. I did that for 20 plus years saying, yep, this is what we're going to do. And I think it's crazy, but to tell somebody there's another treatment option, and maybe not in the bunion scenario, but maybe like insertional Achilles tendonitis, there's another treatment option. It isn't covered by insurance. It costs $1,500. Suddenly we're sweating. Why? Some of these people have $6,000 deductibles. You could be doing something for them that's going to cost way cheaper than them going to the hospital or the surgery center. But the reason we're not comfortable is because nobody trained you to talk about money. I honestly think this should be a course in school. I think doctors should, in residency, should be training it. I certainly wasn't trained to do it. And when we started adding cash pay services to our practice, I wasn't magically good at these conversations. I stumbled through them. I over explained. I probably talked people out of treatments in the beginning. The patient would be sitting there perfectly comfortable with the price, and I'd be talking like, now you know, insurance doesn't cover it, and you don't have to do it. There are other options. Stop talking. I had to learn that. Explain the diagnosis, explain the options, explain what you're recommending. Tell them what it costs, and then let the patient decide. That's not selling. For the patient, that's informed decision making. Sometimes the patient's going to say no. A lot of times, the patient's going to say no, especially in the beginning. And this is where I see doctors give up way too early. They buy a Shockwave machine. Patient number 1 says no. Patient number 2 says no. Patient number 3 says, I'll think about it. And then suddenly doctors say, people in my area won't pay for Shockwave. Really? You talked to 3 people. Maybe the problem isn't Shockwave. Maybe you're just not very good at presenting it yet. And it's okay if you're not good at presenting it. You're new at it. I still suck at it sometimes. You weren't great at surgery the first time you walked into the operating room either. You weren't great at patient communication the first month of your residency. You got better. Implementation works the same way. You have to be willing to fail upward. In the beginning, you're going to price something wrong. You're going to create packages nobody buys. You got to just keep trying. You're going to say something awkward. I do that a lot. You're going to train your staff and realize 2 weeks later that the workflow makes absolutely no sense, or the pricing or the packaging doesn't work. Welcome to business. Just fix it and just try again. The goal isn't to never fail. The goal is to get really good at learning from small failures. But here's the real dark side of implementation. And this is the part that gets missed. Everybody wants to talk about what they're adding to their practice, but nobody wants to talk about what they're willing to remove, because you cannot keep adding these new services. I learned it kind of the hard way because we added PRP, we added the laser, we had it before even that, the OG, we added the 3D printing custom orthotics, and then we added Shockwave, and then there just wasn't enough time. You continue to add these services, it almost gets addicting when you get good at it and your patient outcomes get better and better. So you add these services and then you're like, wait, I don't have enough time on my schedule. And that's why I do talk about, if you're moving into this regenerative medicine space, you really don't have time. I honestly believe you need to leave the diabetic foot care to the people who really want to do it. Because apparently, when I talk about, there's a lot of people that love it. And it was for me for a period of time, and I'm just in a new season of my life, I like to say. And so, yeah, if you love doing that, keep doing it. If you're somebody that's moving into this space where you're implementing new ideas, new programs, there's not a lot of time to talk to people about these things. If you have services like diabetic foot care on your schedule, where you have a large amount of diabetic foot care on your schedule, because in order for you to keep that stuff, you have to add another column to your schedule, and then you have to add another employee to your schedule. You're running around all day doing a $40 service while trying to squeeze a $2,000 treatment program in the room next door. Not implementation. In order to implement, you do have to get rid of some of the services that are either lower paying or services you don't like doing. Otherwise, you're just accumulating more services and not able to perform them all. That's where you get dust on a machine. Yeah, I think the phrase, I think I've heard someone else say this, but implementation without elimination is just accumulation. If you want to fundamentally change your practice, eventually something has to go. It has to go. I say this all the time. Look at what your services are actually paying you. I think this is a big one. This is where doctors need to stop lying to themselves. It's really what lands into your bank account, right? Don't tell me what your fee schedule looks like. Tell me what lands in the bank. And then subtract everything it took to get that money. What it cost for staff, billing, supplies, documentation. For some of these services, some of these lower lying services in the next couple of years are going to require prior authorizations. Then denials. And then you have to ask yourself, if you went back in time, would you intentionally add those services to your practice? I think that's a fascinating question. Forget if you've been doing it 10 years, 15, or 20 years. If someone walked into your office today and they said, Michelle, I've got a great business opportunity for you. Today, you're going to see this patient, document all this, submit a claim, possibly fight a denial. And then 3 months from now, we're going to give you 38 books. Would you say, where do I sign? Of course not. Of course not. But because we've always done it, we're continuing to do it. Again, part of implementation is taking out the things that don't allow you to do the things you want to do. You have to create space for the practice you want. I think that was a huge lesson for us. If you want to add higher value, if you want to add higher value services, you have to create a room for it. It has to be available. Schedule room. You have to be able to move from room to room and not be exhausted and burnt out. You cannot completely redesign your practice while insisting that absolutely nothing about the old practice can change. Something has to give. And that can be scary for sure. It was scary for me because the old stuff feels safe. Even if it doesn't pay very well, it feels safe. There's people coming in. Even if you hate doing it, even if your staff hates it, I'm using hate, that's a really strong word. I didn't really hate any of it. I have to say, I love what I do. Even as the reimbursement kept declining, we kept doing it. New things are uncertain, and human beings would often rather tolerate a bad outcome than the risk of an unknown outcome that could be dramatically better. It's just human nature. I think like our little MediPedi spa is a perfect example. I know I've watched, if you have a MediPedi spa and you've been doing it forever, I've watched all your videos. I think everybody's awesome. But I hope you all get the joke too. I talked about this before. We recently opened a MediPedi spa inside our podiatry office. And when I first started talking about this, I knew some podiatrists were going to kind of give me like, heck, what the heck is Michelle doing now? But here's what I didn't do. I didn't open a small nail salon. We don't do manicures. Why would I do a manicure? I'm a podiatrist. I'm not trying to compete with a nail salon down the street. Nope. Everything we do in that nail spa connects back to what we do in the office. Our entry level service is a medical pedicure. It costs $150. They get a really nice treatment in that 45 to hour long experience. They get a scrub, they get a massage. That's not done by me. That's done by the nail tech. It's something that the patient leaves, they feel good while it's happening and they feel good when they leave. There's nothing wrong with giving somebody a great experience. But then we have the much higher level services that are layered into the spa itself. In the last 2 months, we've developed different programs. A big thing I think when you're implementing is not just to say, okay, this is what we're going to do and then stick to it. When we started, I was like, I don't even know. I said this before. The first time somebody in the spa asked me, do you have a package with the laser and the spa? And I was like, no, I don't. We do have a pay as you go, or patients can now, like, instead of doing the 877 in the spa, we just said, nope, so what we're going to do. We have 2 packages in the spa with the laser. When they come in, we have a lot of people who sign up for a $150 medical pedicure. They come in, and then myself or Dr. Henny goes in. We talk to them for a couple seconds. If they're just there for a medical pedicure, if they're just there for a pedicure, they get the pedicure. Everything's done in a sterile environment, and they leave. If they have questions about anything, we take a couple minutes and answer their questions, and then we leave if they don't need anything from us. But if they need some like a callus or IPK cord out, we do that. Our tech does not do that. There's no sharps that she uses. But yeah, our spa has generated a lot of income because when we go in, often somebody says, oh, can you look at this toenail? We explain to them if it's toenail fungus. We're like, hey, yeah, this is toenail fungus. These are your options. And it's a 5-minute conversation. If they decide they want to do the laser, we give them one of 2 options. One is we have the 6 laser, 6 pedicure, and they do that 6 consecutive months in a row. They come in and they do the laser and they get a pedicure each time. And we do the laser and our nail tech does the pedicure. Pretty simple, pretty clean. And the math on that is we charge $15.77 for the 6 visits. The other alternative is that they want to come once a month for a whole year. We charge $2,400. And each time they come in, we laser them and then they get the pedicure done. And we have people signing up for that on a daily basis. It's really kind of cool. To the point that I'm like, maybe I'll open another spa room and hire another nail tech. I think I could provide more service to patients for this. And our office fare a little bit better as well, providing this service. So yeah, when you're implementing, you just have to keep with rolling with the punches. I say this all the time. I share a bunch of standard operating procedures or SOPs on the Independent Podiatrist Network in our Facebook group, but all the SOPs in the world are not going to help you. You have to be figuring out your systems as you go, as you implement. So anybody that gives you advice that you have to know everything before you start, you don't. I think you have to have a person. Your personality can't be like, I'm going to sit back and wait. If you have that personality, then just keep that personality. Don't do this stuff. But because you won't be successful. If you're not the type of person that can jump in and do it, you're not going to be successful. If you have to be able to be afraid to fail a little bit because it's going to happen and trial and error with all of it. I think the MediPedi spa, just implementing that, it really works in a podiatry practice. It works with what we're already doing. We're not doing facials and Botox, and we're not selling scented candles in the lobby. We're staying in our lane. We're providing services that podiatrists serve, and we're doing this in a really nice way for our patients. I think we're just making the lane wider for the things we can do. And I think that's an important distinction. You got to stay you have to stay in your podiatry lane, but you can make that lane wider, regardless of what all the podiatry dogma, all of the people who are in different podiatry spaces who just are not doing this. I just don't think you can take my very personal opinion is if you were in private practice and you're independent practice, you cannot take business or feedback from people who are not in like-minded situations. If you've been in practice like me, 25 years, I'm pretty solid in podiatry. I love podiatry. I love what I do. But there are people who, yes, absolutely. I don't gaff, as my kids would say, about what anybody thinks of me. And I don't think you should either. This is a really important distinction is that I'm widening the lane for myself. I think you should too. If you're in the regenerative space, if you're using laser, soft wave, adding the MediPedi spot, these things are all things that are very viable and make money in an independent practice. But yeah, in the spa, there's so many things that it already applies to in podiatry practice. We have an athlete recovery pedicure, which me or Dr. Henny will go in and we'll do the laser before and after the spa. However it works for us, works really nice. But however it lands in the day. But all of this, nail disease, biomechanics, orthotics, recovery, all of this is part of what we do, the regenerative medicine. I think we're in a time too where there's a lot of people who I think medicine has to change, right? There's all these things like I can say when we opened the spa and I shared that publicly with other podiatrists to say, hey, wait, this is really awesome. You should be doing this. I didn't share that like, hey, look at me. This is what I'm doing. I think it's great for our profession. I think it's a great way. If you're an independent doctor, again, it's these services you add. We're widening the lane. I think it's a great analogy. We're widening the lane because the people who are working for like private equity and hospitals, they can't do this. They just can't. They can't just wake up one morning and be like, you know what's really good? I know that I don't own that building or I don't pay for that lease, but I'm going to try and see if we can do this. They can't. They just can't. And God bless them. If you're one of those people listening, I'm not trying to poo-poo on you. I'm sure there's like great benefits to you. For you, you don't have to go home and think about payroll. I was thinking about creating new ideas and doing fun things, but I do and I love it. Sorry. All these things are opportunities are all around the things you're already doing. I don't think every podiatrist should offer every treatment. If you're not into it, don't do it. And it certainly doesn't mean you should blindly copy what someone else is doing. Know your state, know your laws, all that stuff. Know your scope of practice, know your evidence. That becomes clearer the more you do some of these different things. I always like to talk about profit, even though I think it's a perfectly good word. If you own a business, profit is a good thing. A doctor's office is a business. I think that's why so many doctor's offices do fail or probably sell out because they get so uncomfortable about talking about profit in business. I talk to my patients all the time when somebody asks, why is that so expensive? I find that to be an opportunity to talk to them about how medicine works and how expensive things are. But I do think it's another dark side of implementation. Physicians have somehow conditioned to feel guilty about something being profitable. I don't understand that. There's nothing unethical about profit. You're a business. I think, do you know what is unethical? Providing unnecessary treatments, right? So I don't laser everybody, I don't soft wave everybody. I think you can't promise outcomes you can't guarantee. You can't bill for something you don't do. You can't create diagnoses because that's what's going to get something paid. Those are ethical problems. But providing a treatment the patient wants, explaining the evidence and alternatives, telling them insurance doesn't cover it, and getting appropriately compensated for your expertise, your staff, your equipment, your risk, that's not unethical. That's running a medical practice. It's what you have to do. Your employees expect a paycheck. Your landlord expects rent. The company that sold you the laser certainly expects to get paid. Like, honestly, apparently everybody in healthcare is allowed to make money except the doctor. And that's ridiculous. Patients are changing too. And I think doctors underestimate this. Most of the people that walk in my door do not want surgery. They do not want surgery. They do not want to be in a boot for 6 weeks. They don't want downtime. They don't want to take a pill if they don't have to. And they want all their options. They want all of their options. Sometimes the answer absolutely is surgery. Sometimes it's conservative care that has nothing to do with anything in the regenerative space. It's traditional care is the right answer. But sometimes the other options are better. And if there's reasonable evidence for supporting these different types of treatments, why wouldn't you discuss it with the patient? Insurance coverage doesn't determine whether a treatment has value. It determines whether an insurance company has agreed to pay for it. That's it. Those are two very different things. Our practice today looks totally different. I say that all the time. In the last 2 years, our practice, and I didn't think, I want to make this distinction. I didn't think our practice was bad. I didn't. I was just, everything was just another cog in the wheel. I never thought anything was wrong. Fluctuating some monthly incomes, and I never thought it was right. I did everything the way we always did it. The first year I was off, I did my own billing because I wanted to learn and make sure I knew how to do the billing. I think that's important. If you're going to start on your own, take a billing course. But I never thought anything. After the first year, we went to a billing company and we had 4 or 5 billing companies because like I said, everybody else is making money in medicine, but the doctors sometimes. But yeah, we had 4 or 5 billing companies over the years. And I will say, like, our practice was probably like, if some of you are listening to this, was probably like your practice is now, where you're seeing anywhere from 35 to 50 people a day. I could never go back to that life. I could never go back to that life. And you're busy. You have somebody else trying to help you do a bunch of stuff. And I just thought that's how it is. That's what we grind. That's what doctors do. We grind. But I noticed I wasn't giving a better level of care to my patients. And I wasn't getting outcomes that were like superb. And in the last 2 years, like I said, as we implemented, we eliminated some stuff. And eliminating that stuff, as scary as it was, the best thing we ever did. Honestly, if you walked into our practice several years ago and then walked in today, you would see a very different business. And there wasn't one giant moment where everything changed. There wasn't some master plan where Tim and I sat down on one Sunday and said, okay, here's exactly what the practice is going to look like in 3 years from now. It's not what we did. It happened one implementation at a time. I can tell you, definitely one implementation at a time. We added something, we learned. We changed the pricing. We didn't stay the same with everything. We changed how we talked about it. We trained the staff. We screwed things up. We screwed things up a lot, and then we fixed them. We'd add something else. And importantly, and again, most importantly, we started removing things that just didn't serve us anymore. Services that didn't make sense. Not if you're running a practice that's more MSK. Insurance relationships that make sense, we cut them. Schedule patterns that didn't make sense. And we slowly changed the practice. And then one day you look around and realize, holy crap, we built a totally different practice. I think that's how transformation actually happens. It's not overnight. one uncomfortable decision at a time. You don't need to blow up your practice tomorrow. And please don't listen to this podcast and cancel every insurance contract this afternoon. Don't go buy 4 machines because Michele said implementation is important. That's not the point. Just start with one thing. Look at your practice and really ask yourself, what is the one thing I've wanted to implement that fear has kept me from doing? Maybe it's Shockwave. Maybe it's laser. Maybe it's PRP. For some of you, maybe it's 3D printing custom orthotics, because I talked to a lot of people about that. And maybe it's creating a treatment program. Maybe you have some of these things, but you have no treatment programs. Maybe it's simply changing appropriately for something you're already doing. Maybe it's simply charging appropriately for something you're already doing. Just pick one. And then just ask yourself this question: what is the one thing I'm doing right now that no longer serves my patients, my staff, or my business? One thing to add, one thing to remove. That's it. I'd say give yourself a timeline. Give yourself 6 months. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to screw some things up. You're going to have patients say no. You're definitely going to second guess yourself. Somebody in some Facebook group will probably tell you you're destroying podiatry. You'll survive. Just keep learning, keep adjusting, keep adding, keep reading the literature, keep looking at your numbers, and keep listening to your patients. And most importantly, keep feeling upward. Because I can tell you from experience, our practice has changed dramatically over the last several years, and I would not go back. The biggest risk to your practice isn't trying something new and failing. The biggest risk is practicing exactly the same way for the next 10 years while reimbursement, technology, patient expectations, and healthcare change all around you. You don't need anybody's permission to build a better practice. Do it ethically, do it intelligently, do it within your scope, but do it. Stay in your lane, just make your lane wider. And sometimes you just have to dip your toe into the pool. No pun intended, actually pun intended. I'm Michele McGowan, I'm a podiatrist, and this has been Podiatry Unfiltered. I hope that this is helpful to someone. And feel free to email me if you have any questions. My email address is anklefootcare@gmail.com.